Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 6 from the 2011 Women's World Chess Championship match. Going into this round, Humpy Koneru on the white end is trailing 2 points to Hou Yifan's 3, and it's worth noting that the night before this game, Hou Yifan spent several hours in a Tirana hospital. She was experiencing severe pains in her stomach. Some tests were run. It came back that beyond just the pressures of the match itself, there really wasn't anything else going on, but clearly in this particular game there's more than just one battle going on for black. But let's have a look. We have the game taking a similar path to round 3, where things didn't turn out so great for white. That's where black struck first, winning with this Ragozin variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. Up until this point, this is exactly what we saw in Game 3, and in that game we had c takes d, and the bishop came outside of the pawn chain. Things are different at this point here. Instead of c takes d, in this Game 6 we have Queen a4, forcing knight c6 because of the pressure on the bishop, and now e3. So one of the main differences between these two lines is this bishop right here. It's stuck behind the pawn chain. So why exactly would you want to do that? Well, for one reason, you're not going to be subjected to, let's say, queenside pressure. In that other line, we had the bishop getting kicked around. We had takes on that square. The bishop came out, got kicked around a little bit, and then we had moves like c5, queen a5, knight e4 piling up on that c3 knight. But certainly in this variation, white is not going to have as much pressure being placed on this knight, and there is a drawback associated with now this knight being placed on the c6 square. In queen pawn-like openings, this c pawn likes to be able to move either 1 or 2 squares forward, but both of those are out. So that's one of the drawbacks with this knight's placement. But at the same time, it is at least facilitating this e5 advance, which would allow that queen bishop to deploy. So from here, black castles, bishop d2, a half-developing move, breaking the pin, but it's more along the lines of trying to make a useful move and not yet commit this king bishop. White wants black to first capture on this square so that it could just go point A, point B in one shot, recapturing on c4. And black at this point apparently does not see any other useful moves to be running with, and so just captures on c4. After the recapture, bishop d6. So the bishop does want to play here again to get that e5 move in. This is a really good diagonal, and you have to, you can't do it right now, of course, because of c5, b5, b4. Before you know it, you're pushed off to the 9th rank, and that's not a good feeling. So break the pin, half-developed move, kind of a waiting game, make a useful move. In other words, let's see what black does. They give up the center, you recapture. Now you come back, get ready for that e5 advance. So from here, queen c2 and then a6. I kind of wondered about why white would voluntarily go to c2. One reason for that is because maybe a routine-like move such as castle could be met with this variation, where white no longer has that king bishop or king knight, and so their king side could be vulnerable. And in addition to that, now this bishop is being hit. If maybe rook d1, now there's that Greek gift sacrifice that maybe is possible. I believe bishop takes, king takes. It's something that certainly needs to be of concern to white. And so I believe just watching out, in other words, for that d2 bishop in those lines, the queen voluntarily comes back to that c2 square instead of castling at this point. So queen c2, a6 is played, not really with the intention of b5, but rather to stop knight b5 to chase off this, or to kill that bishop. So a3 watches over b4, and I believe that's played because similarly, if white once again castles, there is the opportunity now that black has for maybe knight b4, and then before you know it, that c5 move gets in, and black is able to strike at the white center. So just avoiding that possibility. Also, making this a2 square available a bit more long-term, like tucking it back to a2 and then maybe to b1. Probably after that queen rook has first played to maybe the d1 square. But this type of battery is not uncommon to see going on the white side. So watches over b4, and again, bishop a2 ideas. So black strikes in the center. We have a bunch of exchanges going on, and now f4 forces this bishop to either capture the knight or retreat to d6. In the game, we had bishop takes knight. If it played back to d6, things get really crazy, I believe. If white were to run with, let's say, e4, the bishop could come here, stop kingside castling. You could have queenside castling, and it's just a giant mess. I don't even want to touch that one. So we don't have that. It's certainly much more dynamic. I believe black runs with a more positional type of variation, just giving up the bishop pair and trying to exploit this backward pawn now, and that's exactly what black does, targeting it immediately, and white simply ignores it, says go ahead, grab the pawn, and black does. Runs to the corner and now gets out of the way because eventually he was going to be kicked out of there anyhow. And these bishops are really bearing down on that black king side, the queen as well, and there's just a lot of ground being covered here. This is a perfect example of positional compensation for being down a pawn, or just material for that matter. So queen b6 is also looking for maybe bishop to e6 to negate this bishop's pressure along that a2 to g8 diagonal. So white shuts that down. After queen to b6, we just have f5, and this bishop is very limited now. Could only make use of d7, and that's where it goes. Bishop to b4 targets this rook, and after rook f to e8, we have rook a to d1, occupying an open file. There is the opportunity for white to go with this sacrifice, taking on f7 and then landing a check, forcing bishop e6 because there's no other square for the king. After bishop e6, pawn takes, rook takes, I believe white didn't go for this because I don't know where the continuation is. It looks a little bit scary, but looks are deceiving. There's a couple pins, and where is the concrete line that says white really has compensation for being down that pawn? I'm really not seeing it. And so I believe that was the reason why we're not having white run with bishop takes f7 at this point, but instead occupy an open file, target that bishop, and now queen to c6 is targeting g2, but I don't know if that's really that big of a deal right now, but it's definitely not allowing this bishop to move just yet. White does not want to give up exchange queens at this point just yet, being down that material. That would ease black's problems if they're able to get the queens off the board. So white sidesteps that, queen b3, targets f7, and that pawn is going down in flames. There's no way to save it. The dark square bishop controlling these two, and now f7 will fall. So anticipating that, black just gets out of the way and says, okay, if you're going to grab the pawn, at least you're not going to be doing it with check and forcing my king to that h8 square. I'm going to move there voluntarily right now. So rook to c1 was a very interesting move to be seeing here. Why not just grab on f7? Well, here's the big reason. Because after bishop takes on f7, we have this counterattacking move. Okay, bishop takes pawn, you're attacking the rook, but this is a classic example of counterattack. You react to your opponent's threats and throw one of your own. Mate on g2 is coming up. So the idea behind this, in other words, is to first chase this queen away from its aggressive post on that c6 square where it's watching over g2. Only after the queen has moved, now do you take on f7, so that if rook to e2 is played right now, there is no threat on g2. You could just come back and, let's say, kick this rook around. And in fact, in this game, we see a lot of that. These white bishops really start to try and cause black problems, trying to mess up the coordination between the black rooks. So after this queen b6 move, white takes. We don't have rook to e2, but rather rook to e5. And now bishop to c3. White got that pawn back, is now welcoming a queen exchange, and it's pretty much just going to happen at this point. The queens do come off, and this rook is reacting to the bishop's threat. And we do see, I believe, a string of about 8 moves in a row where these white bishops just go crazy, trying to, again, mess with the rook's coordination. Bishop c4, the rook's doubled, bishop d4, and they just keep getting kicked around. And I could see this point right here, bishop to f7. Forcing this rook off of the back rank will allow for maybe some tactics involving the back rank, seeing how black does not yet have a flight square for their king. So bishop back to c4, rook to e4. Black is really down to just a couple moves to be going in each instance whenever their rook is being attacked, and I believe in each instance they're making these accurate moves, but it's not without having to expend a lot of time, and at this point we do have both players in pretty serious time pressure. So rook to e5, the bishop comes back, and this right here is where things really transition. For the one moment that these black rooks are not under fire in some way, the bishop finds a really aggressive post. There's not going to be a better diagonal than the one that's bearing down on g2, and it's going to be a very difficult road ahead for white. Now, there was one possibility, I believe, at this point right here. After bishop to c4 was played and rook to e4, I believe this is where white needs to just say, you know what, I'm going to give up the bishop pair and look to get that material back, or actually just win a pawn potentially. So I believe bishop takes, knight, pawn takes, and then this fork, winning that b2 pawn, rook here, we could grab, and something like this could show itself where, well, the position is back to equality regarding the material, but there's 4 pawn islands, and maybe this is something that white could be looking to work with at this point, trying to show that this is an advantage in some way. But we don't enter that territory. Instead, we have a situation where it's now black who is now the side that starts throwing punches at white. So after bishop to a2, bishop c6 again, focusing on g2, and after white's next move, rook to g1, clearly something has gone wrong. White is essentially crawling up in a ball right here and just hoping for the best, and there isn't going to be a good result that comes about when you're having to do a strictly defensive move, such as rook to g1. You're watching over g2, but at the same time, you're allowing for possibilities for a smothered mate. A knight eventually getting to f2 could turn out to be a smothered mate. So really setting the white side up for disaster when you have to make a move like rook to g1. And black is relentless at this point. Rook on the second rank, targeting g2, b2, you name it. Bishop to d4, chases the rook away. Rook takes pawn, and now bishop to c4, just dodging these one-move threats. And after bishop to c3, black just drops the hammer on the position with knight to e4. Take the rook, and then I take your king with, again, knight f2, smothered mate. So there's no time for that. In the game, we did see rook to e1, and the game finishes up in one of those chess tactics puzzles. We get to see one of those things going on right here. If you'd like to, pause the video, see if you can find the continuation for black at this point. Okay, the game finishes up with knight to g3, and this is going to lead to mate. If the king goes here, it's just a mate in 1. So there is no other option besides just to take the knight. But after rook to h5, white ends up having to resign, because otherwise king g1, rook takes, king f1, and then mate on that h1 square, and the tables turn very quickly right here. After this rook to h5 move, white is having to resign, and unfortunately for white, going down now 4 points to 2, it's a very uphill battle, and with just 4 games left, still a lot of work needed in order for Humpy Koneru to come back in this 2011 Women's World Chess Championship match, but we will see. So that's all for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of it. Take care. Bye.